Hey guys, this is John. I'm playing bg2003 in the 15-minute pool on ICC. Let's open with knight f3 in this game. Just looking for some transpositional possibilities. Can't recall if I played this player before. He said good luck in the chat, so I will tell him the same. Okay, so just looking at his stats, he has a peak rating of 2128 in the 15-minute category. Knight f6 is his answer. I'll play c4. G6, all right, knight C3. So we're going to have a classical King's Indian from the looks of it, unless he goes D5, which was a very distinct possibility I should have noted. Okay, I'm going to take, and after knight takes, I'm going to play E4 and actually play for an endgame. D takes C3. This line is pretty innocuous, to be honest.
Check.
But black has to know what to do in order to equalize. So bishop G7, I can't remember if I'm supposed to put the bishop on E3 or F4. Both are possibilities. The key for black, as I recall in this line, is to try to play for e5 and then put the bishop on e6. So I'm kind of thinking like bishop f4 might be the way to try to take advantage of his last move, since he would have to respond to this attack. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. Because any other move like bishop e3 would just allow e5. I want to say after bishop g7 the move was f6. As weird as that seems, or maybe knight c6 in order to try to get an e5 quickly, but I guess we'll see in the analysis. Okay, I'm going to play, I think, king c2. Yeah, let's go king c2. So this is helpful just to get off the back rank if I want to eventually get a rook to d1. He castles. A common maneuver for white in this line is knight d2 to c4. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Just wondering about f5, if ever he can play f5 favorably with my rook, or my bishop, rather, opposing his rook on f8. I could play bishop c4 to discourage that right now. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Like I said, I might want to use this square for the knight, but I think using it for the bishop right now is okay. It stops f5. If knight c6, I mean, I could just play a move like h3 if I want, stopping bishop g4. That seems pretty good. He can play knight a5 in the future, but I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, let's go here. I want to frustrate his development with this piece. Maybe I could have played knight d2 right away, but I feel like I won't regret having played h3 very much. You guys have probably noticed that I'm partial to these like queenless middle games. I hesitate to call them endgames, even though the queens have been exchanged, but they're rich positions, and just because the queens are off the board doesn't make them any less playable or any more drawish necessarily. Okay, now he plays e5. I'm not sure I like that move for him because he blocks his bishop, and I can play bishop e3 with tempo on the b6 pawn. And then after b6, it seems like I'm very quick to occupy the file. Also, maybe knight g5 attacking f7 will be useful in the future. Okay, so let's go here and attack that pawn, first of all, just see how he responds. And then after b6, I could play bishop d5, trying to work down the diagonal. His knight would be pinned, but probably just bishop d7 or bishop b7 will be the answer in that case. So instead, I'm kind of thinking I want to move a rook to the d file. Knight g5 immediately looks premature because he could just play h6, and I don't want to give up my two minor pieces for his rook plus pawn. So I'm thinking move a rook to the file. We've reached this position pretty quickly, 12 moves in, and he hasn't really thought for very long. Not sure I agree with that time usage strategy, but maybe he can make it out of this all right. So if rook d1, let's say rook a d1, that seems like the more logical rook to move. Maybe I want this rook to come to e1 in the future, who knows. So if rook a d1, he can't move this light square bishop to a favorable square. d7 would be taken away, and b7, I could always play rook d7. So I think if I played that move, probably he's going to go knight a5, attacking my bishop. And what's my plan then? Bishop d5 seems logical. Rook b8. Maybe b4 then? Or a slow move like rook d2 and try to double up the rooks. Another option I see here is a3 or a4, giving the bishop a retreat square to a2 in the event of knight a5. However, if, let's say, a4, knight a5, bishop a2, I see some moves that could be bothersome, like bishop d7 attacking that a4 square, or maybe even c4 to block it. So Hmm. Kind of think I should just play rook d1 and go for that position. You know, if he wants to play knight a5, just let him. I could also play bishop d5 once again, but I think there's not much to be gained if he just puts the pawn or the bishop on b7 to defend it. Yeah, okay, let's do this. We'll see. Rook d6 could be played if the knight doesn't move. Occupying the file is logical. So right now I just want to use my time to think about what would happen if knight a5, which was played. So bishop d5 was the way I was leaning. Is there any reason to go like bishop b5 instead? Maybe trying to come to d7? That looks a bit strange. Like, let's say bishop b5, pawn a6, bishop d7. He can even decline the trade with bishop b7. I might have b4 in some cases to attack the c5 and b6 pawn chain, but bishop d5 looks far and away like the most logical move. So let's do that. Be better if this was a knight. Knights do better on centralized squares than bishops, but all things considered, I think this is all right too. So if rook b8, which I think is the best move, I have to decide if I want to go b4 or not. Or if I just want to play some other move like maybe knight d2 or maybe rook d2. That d2 square can be used for multiple pieces. He does play rook b8. That's probably best. I like b4 because it breaks up the c5 points and it gains space. So I'm kind of liking what I see out of that move. I just don't want to give his knight like a real strong excuse to get to, like, say, the d6 square. And that provides a pretty strong excuse. I mean, he's going to have to move his knight, either with or without a capture on b4. So let's say b4, c takes b4, c takes b4, knight b7. I could drop my bishop back to b3 then, stopping knight d6. He still can't move that light square bishop. He's kind of bound up. If a5 there, I could just play a3 and support the pawn, and also b6 would be weak. That's got to be some sort of advantage for me. Maybe he'd have to play rook d8, but then I hit him with that knight g5 move. That knight g5 move is a big pest. b4 looks pretty good. Yeah, I kind of like it. Let's do it. We've got 9:30. We've got plenty of time, I think, for this position. He's moving pretty fast, but I'm not impressed by his setup so far. I wonder for him if it's better to take or just play knight b7. Knight b7 does not lose a pawn. Note, because if I, let's say, take on b7, he takes with the bishop, and then I take on c5, even though his pawn only had one defender, his bishop that would be on b7 at that point is hitting my pawn on e4. And I would be very hesitant to trade my strong light square bishop for his knight without just cause to do so. I think knight b7 immediately, I'll probably play the same thing. Just bishop back to b3 and stop knight d6. His knight is awkward on that b7 square. I mean, he can't really get to knight d6 anyways, though, if I just leave my bishop on d5, because c5 would be hanging. But still, something about bishop b3 just feels right. It kind of speaks to me, that move. Just call me the chess whisperer. Yeah, I like the way this is shaping up. If I'm to use the d2 square in the future, I'm thinking it's probably better reserved for my rook, unless knight g5 is no longer a possibility. So rook d2 or bishop b3, those are the moves I'm most strongly considering right now. I could play b5 and grab space, but bishop, or knight d6 rather, would occur in that case. If bishop e3, I think there's a pretty good possibility he'll just play h6 and try to stop a future knight g5. Or maybe he'll go bishop e6 and take on a structural weakness, double isolated pawns if we trade. But then my rook gets into d7 at the end of that line. I don't know if he'll like that. Bishop b3 is a pretty simple move to play that looks strong, so I think I'll go for it. Rook d2 just looks a bit obscure right now. I like the idea of rook d2 doubling up, but I don't see the purpose of it at this juncture. So to me, this looks like playing bishop b3, I can clearly say that it stops knight d6. So that's what I like about that move, even if knight d6 wasn't quite a threat yet. Maybe the threat was to take on b4 and then knight d6, so he doesn't lose the c5 pawn. Yeah, I know if I were black in this position, I would not want to face the position with bishop b3. He still can't play f5. I think h6 is very likely. And then I'll figure out whether I want to double up the rooks at that point, or maybe play knight d2 and try to come to c4. Maybe think about b5 in the future. Wonder if on the previous move, taking on c5 was also possible. That would have been interesting too. That's a move I should have considered. I'll go back and look at that after the game. But I have a specific idea in mind with that one. Okay, I could still take on c5, but a3 was what I had in mind. Taking on c5 would be kind of inconsistent now. Yeah, I'm just going to play a3. b6 is a weakness, so that might be another reason to go knight d2 and try to swing the knight into c4, attacking b6 and also looking at e5 and d6. I want to see if he clarifies the pawn structure in the center, or rather on the queen side. Two exchanges on b4, so say a takes b4, a takes b4, c takes b4, c takes b4. I think that should be in my favor, because then he'll have to respond to the pawn on b6 being undefended. Yeah, not sure I would have played a5 if I were black. If he doesn't intend to take on a3, it's a question of whether the inclusion of a5, a3 helps him or me. It doesn't bother me too much to just defend b4, but he's created a clear weakness on b6 and playing a5. For instance, maybe in some endgames, if I play b5 and the position gets super locked up, maybe my knight coming to c4 will be putting more pressure than his position can handle because b6 is undefended. Plays rook e8. Okay, that move I always thought could be met by knight g5, and he has to go right back to f8. There's also bishop a4 if I want to harass him that way. But knight g5 at the very least looks pretty testing. Knight g5, he has to go... Well, I guess he could go rook e7 in that case. Maybe that's the point. Rook e7, and I can't get into d8 with my rook because of the knight guarding that square. Okay. So knight g5, rook e7, and maybe he's okay. If bishop a4, also rook e7, and he might be fine. Well, now I'm looking at that b5 move again. b5, bishop e6. Let's say we trade. He takes with the rook, probably. It gets his knight there pretty fast, though. To the d6 square, that is. Huh. Knight g5, rook e7. There's really nothing there, huh? No infiltration for my rook. It's hard to shift his knight from b7. I could take on c5 right now. That's also possible. So if I take c5 and he takes with the knight, then say I trade on c5 and play knight g5. I wonder if that comes with more force. Because rook e7 could be met by rook d8 check. And if rook f8, I was going to say knight takes f7 in that line, but he has rook takes b3. That might be a little bit of a hard line to follow, but I'm getting slightly short on time, so I'm going to try to make a decision soon. If bishop a4, rook e7, bishop g5, he can simply play f6. That doesn't bother black too much. Pawn takes c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes c5, b takes c5, knight g5. Say rook f8. I gotta be somewhat better there, I would think. His dark square bishop is pretty passive. Okay, let's do that. Let's take. Interesting last few moves. Yeah, now I'm thinking take here. And play knight g5. Just making sure that I don't want to send my knight to like d2 and c4. I think knight g5 is helpful, so let's do that. I just want to see how he defends this pawn. He might defend it with rook b7. But I can tempo him with bishop d5 if he does that. So I've lost my dark square bishop, but I think his pawns on the queen side should be harder to defend than mine will be, a3 and also c3. I like the fact that his dark square bishop is out of the game. Probably the dark square bishop's best bet of getting into the game is via f8, but hard to see a circumstance where he's going to be able to do that super easily. Okay, so now I want to attack this rook. Do I go bishop d5, or do I play bishop a4 and hit this rook first? I could play bishop a4 and then bring the bishop into c6. That's interesting. Now I'm going to go bishop d5. That's a more natural move in my opinion. And maybe this rook's coming over to b1. That's what I'm thinking. If, let's say, rook d7, I can play rook b1 and I'd be threatening bishop c6. So let's see where he places that rook. He might just put it on c7. That's the safest move. If he puts it on c7, I think I'll still play rook b1 and try to invade down the b file. Like b5 is a good square. Okay, let's come here. If h6, I'll just drop the knight back. I'm not going to be taking on f7. I would only take on f7 and trade my two minors if there was some sort of tactical follow-up. But I don't think he'll be too unhappy about that resulting position. Okay, I like this. I mean, I might be playing for just a small edge with my minor pieces against his. Like now I can take on e6. I don't think I want to allow him to play c4. That's one thing about this position. So I could take on e6 and then try to play c4 myself, or just play it right now. If I take e6, he takes with a rook, let's say, rook b8 check, king h7. My pieces are getting to the game awful fast there. Let's do that. Taking with a pawn isn't looking too good for him. It's pretty ugly. Okay, so let's give this check. If my pawn were on h4, I could play knight g5. Is one funny thing about this position. But I think I should just move my rook to the d file or the b file right now. Could also play rook a8 if I want to try to win the a5 pawn. Do I throw in h4 just to see what he does? h4, I think he'll play bishop f6. I don't really see a lot of benefit to doing that. My problem here is going to be time, so let's just play this move and see how he plays it. Doubling up. Again, I could have played rook a8 and maybe gone after that a pawn, but I think I'm going to have the choice of which pawns to go after. I actually honestly want to trade a pair of rooks. I'm worried that he might be able to like coordinate these rooks somehow and threaten my king. So I'd like to take away that possibility before attempting to collect his weaknesses. This bishop's still tough to get in the game. I mean, he can play bishop f6, but it can only go to e7 after that, which isn't much better. Love to maneuver this knight, so I mean, let's keep an eye out for knight d2 maneuvers in the future. I think c4 would be a pretty logical try for him. He plays f5 instead. Maybe rook b7? I don't know that a capture here really bothers me much. Maybe knight d2 first, though. Yeah, let's just do knight d2 first. It's safest. f5 somehow seems reckless. I think on the 7th rank he might be hurting now. I have 3 minutes left compared to his 7. But I feel like I can whip off a lot of moves pretty quickly in this position because it's closed and black has trouble like making direct threats. So I like that. Probably my next move will be rook 1 to b7 if allowed. Offer a trade down the file. I feel like at some point he's going to have to lose a tempo, moving either his bishop off the 7th rank or his king. Right now his king can't move. This line, incidentally, was a favorite of Ulf Andersson back in the day, the Swedish grandmaster. Rook f6, I don't see what that does. Okay, I'm just going to come in with the rook. Because, I mean, if he takes e4, I'm just taking with the knight anyways. I'm attacking his rook and I'm holding f2. Let's pre-move this capture. Yeah, and like I said, after a possible trade here, I think he's going to have to waste time like moving his king in the future. And then maybe I have time to go after that a-pawn. Or the c-pawn. Probably the a-pawn, though. I'd rather win that one. It's the more distant outside pawn. So that's what I like about it. Okay, so here, if I play rook a7, I'd be threatening the pawn and threatening to double up and attack his bishop. Rook e8's another way to do that, too. Same with like rook d8 or rook d7. I kind of just want to choose one. Let's play rook a7. Getting ready for this possibility. So we're going to trade now. He's got to trade, otherwise he loses the bishop. So good chance I just win that a-pawn. I don't foresee a circumstance where I wouldn't win that pawn. Now we're going to try to win the endgame. Hopefully up a pawn with a dangerous a-pawn, and ideally with his bishop being kind of a spectator. Oh, that's a clever move. He's trying to maybe prepare bishop h6. Gotcha. Okay. Knight f3. Does that make sense? If he takes, then I check. And then I take on e4 after that. Kind of like that. Okay, let's try it. It's a weird looking move, but the idea behind this move is sound, I believe. If king h6, I was going to take here. Then if he takes e4, I give a check on f7. He goes king h7, then I check g5, and I take on e4 at the end. King g5. Wow. That just drops his bishop. He offered a take back. Well, I don't know about a take back. That seems a little extreme. He said LOL GG in the chat. Yeah. This one is a little bit beyond saving after you lose the bishop like that. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know about giving a take back there. I mean, he's up time. He should be more careful with his moves, and I don't really know what he was intending on playing king h7. That also doesn't look too good. We'll just tell him good game and thanks, and then we'll have a look at it. So King's Indian and Grunfeld players can play this way against knight f3. If black wanted to play King's Indian, he would play bishop g7, but instead he goes d5. And there's possibilities for here for white other than taking the pawn on d5. Like queen a4 check is played. I've played that on occasion, trying to misplace black's pieces. But taking is the main line. Now, e4 isn't supposed to lead to an advantage for white after this queen trade. B takes c3 is another option for white, but this queen trade is like an interesting way to just try to get to a queenless middle game where white has chances to play for a win if they know some ideas. So I believe the main move is f6. Like, it's been established that you should try to put this pawn on e5 as quickly as possible, and I'm pretty sure the bishop should not come to g7. I think Anderson's games have showed that, because he was the main practitioner of this line for many years. So bishop g7, that's why I played bishop f4, stopping e5 and hitting the pawn. c5, king c2, castles, bishop c4. Maybe h3 is unnecessary. I'm going to turn on the engine right about here and just see. The engine already vastly prefers white's position. It says I should just centralize a rook. I mean, I was trying to stop bishop g4, but I think even in these positions, white should be better, despite black having got rid of a problem piece. White square bishop's a bit hard to figure out for him what it should do. But yeah, that's probably what I should do. I think h3 was unnecessary. White should still be better after that, but yeah, in retrospect, I would have just put a rook on d1 straight away. So h3, he played e5. I really didn't like that move for him. Probably if he's going to play this position, he should just play knight a5 immediately, keep this diagonal open for the bishop. So e5, I get to play bishop e3 with tempo. The computer likes bishop g5, on the other hand, or bishop g3. Neither of which I considered too seriously. I mean, I just saw bishop e3 with tempo, and I like the fact that my bishop could take action on the queen side and the king side. But bishop g3, I guess the idea is black's just going to have a hard time with the e-pawn. He needs both the knight and the bishop to defend it, so like knight a5 operations are going to be a lot riskier. And remember that this f-pawn is pinned. I'm still pretty happy with my choice. I think bishop g3 was good, but that was another possibility. So b6, I just played rook a d1. The computer likes bishop b7, but I thought I was just going to go here in that case. Oh, and then knight a5, hitting the bishop, attacking here. Play bishop d5, hitting the bishop. Take. Neither rook or pawn takes, probably rook takes. Attack this pawn. Get ready to double. And black is still a lot worse according to the computer. This structure he has just doesn't make a favorable impression because I feel like his bishop is dead in a lot of cases, and that d5 square is just a ripe square for like a knight in the endgame. Also, my king, it's remarkable how in these endgames, the king often can just like march into the queen side in a reduced material situation. In fact, there's an Anderson game where he does exactly that. He plays like king from c2 to b3 to c4, and black has a weakness on b5, and it was almost like Anderson was playing with an extra piece. So knight a5, I put the bishop on d5. He went rook b8, and I played b4. The computer wants to go b3, huh? Controlling the c4 square, perhaps? Getting ready to play c4? Not as forceful. Yeah, I don't know. b4 seems natural, so I think I would do it again. And he plays knight b7. I was speculating whether black should take first or not. Maybe knight b7 is more of a tricky way of continuing. Yeah, I'm just looking at the computer and the moves it's recommending from move to move, and some of them I just didn't even consider. Like it was saying bishop c1 for a second. a3 is a natural move. I'm not sure I have to play a3 yet, though. I moved the bishop back to b3. I thought for a little while here, about a minute. I think it's okay. Oh, the other possibility I had mentioned in retrospect was taking on c5. So I wonder if this is at all good. So the idea would be to just try to trade on c5 and then like take over the b file. So rook b1. With play similar to the game, I think. Like I have the bishop and knight versus his two bishops. But as happened in the game, like his bishop pair wasn't effective, mainly because his dark square bishop was so bad, and he already had so many weaknesses he had to tend to. The position is not open enough where the bishop pair would be a force either. So that was a way of proceeding as well. But instead I played the bishop back to b3. He went a5. I just kept the structure together, a3. I was saying I didn't really like a5 for him because I feel like it just creates a weakness on b6 for free. He's kind of just gifting me a future attack on this pawn. And if a bunch of trades occur on this square, again, b6 will be under immediate attack. If black could somehow get like all the queenside pawns off the board, like say they could do this and somehow the b pawns were also exchanged, that's a different matter because then we only have pawns in the center and on the king side, and the queen side is just an open board basically. But that b pawn that I have remaining is going to make his life miserable, mainly because he can't coordinate. His knight can't get into the game. So he played rook e8. I found that move surprising, but then I saw the point. Like if knight g5, he's just going to play rook e7, I think. And unless I have some good way of proceeding here, maybe I do. Now that the engine eval goes up, I just didn't see that I was gaining anything because he's controlling these two squares with his knight. The knight is poorly placed, but it does guard d8 and d6. So what did I miss? Take? What if pawn takes? Just rook b1 now. Okay, so maybe targeting his knight and his rook on the b file. And I guess my next move would be bishop d5 if possible. So what if like h6? Just knight f3? Yeah, I can see that. I do like white's position. Knight d5 is coming next. And this knight can't move because he loses the c5 pawn. So like knight d6, just take here. Or I guess even bishop takes f7 is possible with this idea. Winning the rook. If I had a bit more time, I maybe could have found that. But I didn't look much further than knight g5, rook e7, and I didn't see a way that like my rook would make an appearance on d8. But taking on c5 is probably the way to proceed, because if he does take with the knight, well, then I can go to d8 with my rook. That's probably better for me in that resulting position. Like rook d8, the computer's giving a line like bishop f8, take c5, pawn takes. I could take on h7 here and try to win a pawn, but probably better to do like bishop d5, like the computer's saying. Put the bishop on a good square and just kind of inquire about how he's going to solve this development issue. Control the b7 square too, so he can't double up his rooks on the file. It looks pretty strong. But I took c5, he took with the knight, and we traded. Then I played knight g5, just seeing how he was going to respond to the attack. He went here, bishop d5, this looks pretty good. So I'm trying to take over the file with this operation. Now rook b1. And I think he could have defended better from here, but it is pretty nice for white. You see this advantage persisting. He played h6, doesn't bother me, I just drop right back to f3. I think in the future my knight wants to take this route anyways, so it's probably fine. Yeah, maybe bishop h6 was probably a better option. That way if knight f3, at least I can't go to d2 without him having the option of taking and trading. He's still worse, like probably my rook's going to come in, but this might give him more chances. His bishop is actually participating now. But instead he plays h6, I play knight f3, bishop e6, I just traded.
Check.
We give a check here, so preparing to double up on the b file with tempo. Yeah, and I mentioned that I wanted to go after the a pawn, but I wasn't sure if I should do it right away, like rook a8. Because I was envisioning some scenarios, like let's say rook b6, and if I were to just take this pawn, like I don't want something like this happening, where he gets to double up and attack b2. And yes, I'm up a pawn. I might even still be better, but I'd rather suppress this counterplay if possible. Because the thing to realize here is that his weaknesses are chronic. They're not going anywhere. As you saw in the game, like attempts to activate his position backfire, like f5 I don't think was a good idea. Just created problems for him down the 7th rank. Whereas I have like everything nicely defended, and even pawns that are undefended, like a3 and e4, it's almost impossible for him to get at those. Whereas I'm about to have free reign on his pawns. It's like open season on those guys pretty soon. And my knight even might join. So all I want to do here, before I go and attack those chronic weaknesses, is just suppress his counterplay. And I think the way to do that is to exchange one pair of rooks. If he can never double up, he can never create problems for me down the D or the B files. Because my king on C2 will just cover everything if he has only one rook. But doubled up rooks on the D or B files, you know, some configuration like I just showed you, like so, that could do some damage. That's practically the only thing he can do that will give me any sort of headache. So even though the computer says rook a8's better, I think this is a plenty good move as well, unless there's some specific reason why. But the advantage is holding pretty steady, so I like that move. f5, I just played knight d2. Like I said, I don't think this move really helped him much. Oh yeah, I should mention that tactical possibility. I was saying, if my pawn were on h4, I could actually go knight g5 check here. And if he were to take it, I take with the h-pawn discovery, and he'd have to play bishop h6 and just give me his bishop then. So it crossed my mind that this might be a decent move now, h4, threatening knight g5. You know, say he makes some indifferent move. Oh, I actually have forced mate in this line. Here, check. Here, bishop h6, here, check. Here, and I would assume, oh, this rook over. I was thinking about this rook, the h rook to h8, but this rook is even better. Yeah, because now he can't stop this checkmate. I could pre-move that checkmate. So that would be the threat if h4, but I just thought he would play bishop f6 in response to that, and I might not have gained anything, because if knight g5 now, he can take with the bishop, and then after pawn takes, go h5, although I guess I do have this move in a lot of cases. Maybe I should have considered that more. But I guess the computer's saying this is perhaps okay. Getting to a rook endgame. Because in a vacuum, I would not want to trade my knight for his bishop unnecessarily. I would only do that if there was some tactical operation. Just like I was talking about the knight and the bishop taking on f7. trading for his rook and pawn. I would only do that, give up my better pieces for his less relevant pieces if I was gaining something pretty substantial from that. Because otherwise, I think my knight is like always going to be better than his bishop in these positions. Like c4, d5, b3, those are just too great of squares for my knight to like eventually maneuver into. But h4 was kind of a cute possibility. Might even be decent. But I just doubled up. He played f5, I just dropped back to d2, so if he takes, I just get to take, and he's got another weakness. My knight is blockading on an awesome square. Stops rook d6, stops rook f6. It looks at the c5 pawn. This is probably lost for him. As played, the position's also probably lost, but yeah, this is what will often happen. Like when you have your opponents kind of under your thumb like that, most people would rather go down swinging than defend like a somewhat worse position passively. So I mean, his decision to play f5 is kind of understandable, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of people who would play it the same way, even if the computer isn't thrilled about it either. So here he played rook f6. Maybe the h5 move was better now. I see the engine suggesting that. I'd still come in here with the rook and try to exchange rooks along the file, but at least this way he didn't have to waste time with rook f6. The rook f6 move he played didn't do practically anything. There's no threat. I mean, if he wants to take, I just take, and I'm even hitting his rook with tempo, and my knight defends the pawn. So probably this was like the last chance to attempt to activate that dark square bishop with h5 and bishop h6. So here I just brought the rook in. I guess he could take right away, but he chose not to. Yeah, now if I move this rook or this rook almost anywhere, I'm threatening to double up on the 7th rank. So I chose rook a7, which I think is fine. He went here. Now we double up, attacking the bishop. He must trade, otherwise he loses that bishop. Yeah, and this is where his weaknesses start to become, well, they already are noticeable, but I start to reap the harvest, if you will. So he played h5 and lost quickly after this, but yeah, I don't think there's really much he can do. Maybe knight f3 was kind of weak. I'm not sure I should have played that. I just saw this possibility with knight g5, now that the pawn was not on h6 guarding that square, so I went for it. I was a little wary of my time, too, but computer says just bank the pawn and forget about it. Bishop h6, just push. Okay, and if he carries through on the threat, take here, just king e3, defend f2. Temporarily, it's equal material, but yeah, I'm probably winning this, and these guys are also goners. All the outside past a pawn. I guess on principle, I was hesitant to go into a rook endgame, so I wasn't even really thinking about trading my knight for the bishop or allowing him to take on d2, but I could see why this is just a pretty clear-cut rook endgame. But I played knight f3. Okay, but if he had played king g8, he has chances. That makes sense, because now he is threatening to take here. If I take here, yeah, he can still take. Hitting f2. King g8 I did not see. I saw king h6, which happened in the game, but I did not see king g8. So in that case, I should take on f5. And if he takes with the pawn, then I could successfully take here if I wanted. So take with the rook instead. And then king d3, e4 check, king takes, bishop takes c3. White's still better according to the computer, but that's not nearly as bad as it was, because now his bishop is open and at least he's not losing the a pawn. Maybe black can hope to save this, especially with my time. So king g8 might have been the last chance. Yeah, king h6, trying to get out of the pin, allows this, and it's pretty bleak now. Because the main thing is if he takes, I saw this sequence, knight f7, king here, knight g5, and it's a little merry-go-round. Let's say he moves his king away, then we take e4. And the knight is just beautiful on this square. Attacks the rook, defends f2. If he comes and attacks it, we can just calmly play f3, blockading. And then I can go collect the a-pawn, and c5 will probably be lost. At minimum, he'll be down 2 pawns without much counterplay. So, yeah, if g5, I can throw in a check here. g5, maybe he's trying to play g4, but I can throw in a check, and if his king comes back, we'll take that pawn. Everything's falling. There's too many weaknesses. But as played, he dropped the bishop, and yeah, soon resigned. All right, I think this endgame was, or this game in general, and this queenless middle game for the most part, was instructive, and I think pretty illustrative for this whole variation. I can recommend this for white mean, as you can see, it's a logical way of playing. I mean, you enter an endgame where even though your king is in the center, you don't mind that because the queens are off the board. And as the rule of thumb goes, if the queens are off the board, you don't mind your king being in the center in most cases. And it's a type of endgame where if you've seen some games, like, for example, of Ulf Anderson, as I have, and you see how strong players play this type of position, you're already going into the game armed with some useful knowledge. And it's not so important that theory says that white can't get an advantage here. Theory says black can equalize in this line, but the position even then is still pretty rich. So, you might play this line if you're looking for something in this anti-Grunfeld variation. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.